We work to trigger their anticipatory response bias. We do that with a series of micro commitments throughout the process of once they register, right? So it starts what Natalia was mentioning, what we call a pre-event assessment. So people register, they go through the pre-event assessment, which collects some data. We use that pre-event assessment to then optimize the marketing on the front end. And Natalia and her team uses that to actually personalize those one-to-one conversations. So they use that to actually dive right in to the areas that matter most.
Hey there, high level and SaaSpreneurs, JB here, and you're tuned in to the podcast that's all about taking your high level game to new heights. Each week, I'll bring in top industry experts who dive deep into the strategies and the way they drive success for their businesses to share with you how to implement in yours. Whether it's getting more customers, leveling up your knowledge, or just supercharging your high level with new strategies, we've got you covered. Today, I have a special episode, and I want to share you and introduce these two folks to you. We have Caleb and Natalia Fowler. I met Caleb at an event, and I said, this is a must-do. We got to connect, and we have to tell your story to our community. And today's story that we're going to be sharing here is how Caleb and Natalia have created a business all around the secrets to building a virtual event that captivate and convert clients at scale. Caleb and Natalia have been in business for about 4.5 years. Caleb running the marketing, Natalia runs the sales, and they both meet in the middle on operations. The episode we're going to be touching on today has 3 important pillars that we're going to be going over. The first one's the pre-event. And when I was speaking to Caleb and Natalia, they were specific to share that it's the triggering of the anticipatory, am I saying it right? Anticipatory response bias, which is that I'll let them explain it. And then we have the during the event, which is creating the breakthrough experience, right? So if you've bought stuff online, you just know there's this moment that kicks in that this is the thing I need to buy. And then the third is that post-event, which is bringing in trust and certainty to the finish line. And the two of them have been gracious enough to kind of just, unlock the treasure chest of information that they've done and used to build their business up. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Caleb and Natalia. Welcome to the Spotlight sessions. Great to have you both.
Oh,
Great to
JB,
be
thank
here.
you. This is great. Excited to
Awesome.
be.
I've never had a husband and wife duo on here. And I'm hoping that this is the first of many, and you inspire a handful of husband and wives to really get themselves out there into the podcast community here with us. But if you could
Buckle
share a
up,
little.
John. You don't know what you got yourself into, bro.
I got the seatbelt on, ready to go. I'm in the car seat. Let's do it. Right. So I want to make sure that the audience that may not be familiar with the both of you just gets to learn a little bit about who you guys are. So Natalia, do you mind sharing a little bit about your experience, kind of your whole flow?
Yeah, definitely. So happy to be here, and it's definitely great to be here with my husband. We've been doing this now, like you said, for about 4.5 years, which has just gone by like this. Prior to launching this, I always like to tell our team whenever we train up a new team, sales team for each event. And when I tell them the story of like how we got here, I say, look, it's not like I woke up in the beginning of my life thinking like this is the business I'm going to create, like it really wasn't like that. It kind of came out of a need. And before this, I was in leadership coaching, and I have a background in sales experience, really in the fitness space. But what took me into this model was realizing that like sales, my passion for sales comes from my desire to support people in transforming the way that they make decisions. And so that's kind of how Caleb and I got involved in this. Like, obviously, we all got kind of swept off of our feet with the whole COVID thing years ago now. And we found ourselves in a place where we needed to pivot. He'll tell you, he was doing marketing for another company. They were doing live events. They switched to an online virtual model in 10 days. And I was a part of the sales team. And so I got to call him after the whole process was over and said, babe, we got to turn this into a business. Now he's going to
Actually,
disagree.
I said that. I said that. So
Yeah. So that's kind of what led into this whole process is that, I saw the opportunity to bring a transformational experience to the online event space by allowing people to have pre-event coaching calls. And Caleb kind of design this entire marketing funnel that's really a high touch quality experience. And Caleb, I'll kind of like pass that over to you to kind of share the inspiration behind what we've been doing with that full front end piece.
Thank you, darling. So I actually, as well, did not anticipate finding myself in the event space. My story starts by moving out to San Diego a few years ago, about 5 years ago, running an online business, didn't know what I was doing, sunk that business, and decided that I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I took a job actually working with somebody else, and as a marketing assistant, as in a coaching company. Within about 2 months, I actually took over the marketing within that coaching company, multi-million-dollar, 7-figure coaching company. And I was always fascinated with marketing. I didn't at the time know what I was doing in business, but I knew I wanted to be in marketing. My dad always said, he just kind of instilled in me to always ask the question, like, why do I do what I do? Which leads me to naturally think about why do other people do what they do, and thinking about that at a meta level, right? And that to me is marketing. And so I took over for this company. We were in the event space, live events. This is before COVID. And it was incredible. I mean, at the time I was very green, but we'd get 60 to 70 people in the room and routinely do $600,000 to $700,000 in contracts with a coaching offer. So COVID hits and our business goes to zero, right? Like literally, because all we did was live events. So we bring in this outside consultant. We paid this guy, I think it was around 50,000. We decide to do the virtual event. He was showing us what he does for virtual events. So we pay him 50,000. He shows us what he does for virtual events. We implement it. And like Natalia said, from idea, like, hey, let's do this virtual event thing, to actually executing it was 10 days. And that virtual event saved the company. We did about $500,000 in revenue, and it completely turned everything around. And at that point, go ahead, John.
Yeah, amazing. And I think that's the story to be told, right? And I think, with what you're sharing and the fact that both of you have been doing this 4.5 years together. I mean, I work with my wife in the same area, and we have to like split off into different parts of the house. So I definitely commend, and I'm probably sneaking a question or two on how you guys make it happen. But most
well, as you can see, John, I'm in one location and she's in another, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm doing the right thing then. Amen. Yeah. I do have a question though. So I have a question for you then. Why should somebody that's listening to this now continue to listen if they're not doing events, if they're not interested in events, if they're maybe not a big fan of or experienced with presenting in front of people in an online event space? Why should they?
It's a great question. It's a great question. I have a follow-up question for you on that. What do Tony Robbins, Russell Brunson, Coach Michael Burt, Shanda Sumter, what do all these people have in common?
I mean, there's a whole, I could go on and on and on, but I'd be interested in the right answer.
So each of them have a dialed in virtual event model to attract and enroll high ticket and low ticket customers and clients into their products and services, because there's literally no better way to enroll clients and customers into your products and services in 2024 than an online event, and particularly the way that we do them and the way that we're going to break down today, that is 100% based on building trust and certainty with your audience. For those of you listening, I'm sure that some of you guys have felt like ad costs are increasing, attendance rates are going down, right? You're getting more, let me think about it. Let me talk to the wife, right? I respect talking to the wife, but right, we're all hearing that a little too much right now. And why? Because the online space, and particularly if you're in the high ticket industry, is where what is in the stage of the fifth level of market sophistication. I don't want to go too deep here, but for anyone who's read Breakthrough Advertising, some consider that the Bible of direct response copywriting. The author talks about the 5 levels of market sophistication. In the 5th and final stage, your audience and your prospects, they've heard all the claims, right? They've seen all the promises, and they're, quite frankly, they're getting fatigued, right? They're getting fatigued of the claims and the promises. Trust is at an all-time low. And what does that tell us? We look at companies like Rolls-Royce, right? Louis Vuitton, companies who've been around for over a century, for over 100 years. They've lasted and not only survived, but thrived through multiple recessions. If we look at the common denominator with all these companies, they all provide a high-touch, world-class, personalized experience. And that is what virtual events allow you to do at scale.
It makes more sense now, right? So, you handling the marketing end of the business, it sounds like, with what you've experienced and what you've seen over time, there has been there's a disruption that's needed. And it sounds like you're going to go over that with us from a sales perspective, Natalia. How has that part changed in your world and what you do on a day-to-day with the business?
Yeah. So I think the biggest piece, the word that comes up is a sense of connection. Over the years that we've been doing this, I would say the number one piece of feedback that we've gotten from the attendees, right, that are in attendance at the event for our clients' events, they always say that they've been to all the in-person events, but for whatever reason, it feels so much more intimate when they come to an online event. And that obviously is not by accident. We've designed this entire process to be, like Caleb was saying, very high touch. And I think in the sales space, especially before we got started in this model specifically, sales was it's always been a little transactional. Even though people try to teach it in a way that isn't, it still feels that way because they're always trying to move through the process so quickly. And the beauty of the container that we've created is that it actually allows for time for us to extend time for trust to develop in that process. And so that process starts first by making sure that the prospect feels understood. We actually have them fill out an assessment before every event to actually tell us where they are. And we use that data to customize the event to the audience's needs. And then from there, they get this touch point where they're actually speaking to a human before they actually go to the event virtually, to be heard, to be understood, to ask questions that maybe they've never even been asked in their life by someone, before. And what we've seen and what they say is that pre-event conversation not only establishes trust of like, wow, they care enough to actually put me on a call with someone and like talk about these things, but it also is designed to get them excited to show up to the event. So imagine now, not only have they purchased the ticket, they filled out the assessment, they've spoken to somebody, but they're hyped more than they were before to actually show up. So it's like now they're ready, they're primed. And when they meet the host of the event, all they can think of is, wow, this person went out of their way to make sure that I was touched, seen, and heard in this experience before I even attended the event. Now they're fully bought in. And so I think what we're really working with here is elevating trust, as we've talked about, to create the sense of certainty that they're not just a commodity, that they're not just a number, that they're not just a card ready to be swiped, but that they're actually a human being that's worth being understood. And then, of course, worth being served to be able to provide a solution for them in the long run.
From what I'm hearing, it sounds like you guys you've put together this ingredient list of making someone feel as connected as they would in person, whether it's shaking the hand or going to the registration desk, or speaking with somebody or meeting people at the event. And then when they're there, there's that safe zone in the mind that, okay, I'm in the right place. So
yeah.
I know I know offline we spoke about the event conversion method that the both of you have put in place into the business, and we'll go a little bit more in depth. But the whole captivate and convert part of this is the end result that we want. We want people to feel great if they're going to sign up to pay for an event, let alone just to be part of it. And then we want to obviously make it worth our time or the time of their time, that we give them what they want.
Yes.
You mentioned the sales part, like, building this relationship. How do you, without going too in depth, but how do you do that at scale? Like that sounds like a very hard thing to do if you got 50 people signed up for an event.
Mm. You want me to
That's a
take that
small event.
one?
That's
That's
one coach.
That's
yeah,
a small event. Oh my
yeah,
goodness. I'm
yeah.
thinking 50, like how are you gonna, that's a lot of people to call. That's a lot of
We
AI to use. Like,
I know, right? Well, we do it in a way that is smart, right? And I mean, I love that you're already thinking about AI because we definitely use AI to synthesize the data that we get. But there's nothing, this is so important, I think, when we're talking about where we plug AI into our human experience, right?
Yes.
And I think that for us, we value the power of human to human connection. And so to answer your question, we train up a sales team. I think I kind of mentioned this a bit in the very beginning, but like with every client, we actually recruit say event coaches. We refer to them as event coaches, not as sales reps, right? Because we actually train them in the skill of coaching for the purposes of being able to have these pre-event calls. And we customize and curate a team specific to our clients' needs so that we have the right people on the front end of the event doing all of these calls. And so we send out, there's parts that are automated. So like enter tech and AI and automations and all that, but that send out booking requests. But we get about 67% of the audience booked in advance of the event for a one-to-one call. And then from there, it is definitely like a one-to-one. We're not avatars yet, so there's definitely that human connection. And I think that goes a long way.
And that's just even to add to that. That's a 1-to-1 25-minute coaching call for every single attendee, right? Or everyone that books in, about
Yeah.
67%. So this last event that we just did, we had almost 1,000 paid registrants. We had about 13 sales coaches fielding these calls. And on that one in particular, I think we had about 600 or just under pre-event coaching calls. This is just leading up to the event. So imagine this, you've got 600 people hopping on these one-to-one calls, all going into the Facebook event community the week of the event saying, wow, I just had my one-to-one call and here was my breakthrough. So you got all of this activity that's happening in the Facebook community, which pushes that out to the event attendees because it Facebook's algorithm then says, hey, there's stuff happening in the group. So then the attendees look at what's happening. They're like, oh my gosh, like what is going on right now? Like this is crazy, right? There must be something of value here, right? Which is what pushes up our attendance rate and why we typically average about a 74% attendance rate on a $27 ticket. Whereas most of the industry we've seen is typically just silently suffering with a 50% attendance
Or
rate
less. Yeah.
or less. One of our clients had a 48% attendance rate. We implemented this model, and her next event, she had a 71% attendance, which that by itself, like what kind of bump does that bring the bottom line of your event?
Yeah.
If you've got
and
almost
that's
50,
what matters the most. You hit it, you hit the home run with it, right? So, whether our audience is looking to fill up a SaaS mastermind to bring
yeah,
on affiliates or resellers into their SaaS ecosystem, or they're looking to put on a business event and reduce the overhead of maybe renting a hotel or a large
Mhm.
venue, but
Yeah.
grabbing people where they're comfortable, where they could still run their business and still participate. Or if we're running into somebody that is a coach consultant that is using high level and they're saying, look, I want to take my talent and get it more known. Um, will you be able to share with us as we move along here some action items that they can do if they don't have, 15, 30, or 60 event coaches?
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
definitely, definitely.
that's going to be big because obviously y'all the experts, right? Y'all doing this with large clients. I saw a handful of testimonials on your website, but I think for this audience that we're working with now, maybe they don't want to go all in on providing it as a service, more of just using it to promote their service. So if it's okay with the both of you, would you mind if we got into the first pillar, which is that pre-event? That's
Yes,
usually like what holds people up. Like I've tried to
yes,
put on events in the past, and it's I'll put together a bunch of slides, I'll put together a bunch of collateral and excitement, and then it's like I drop the ball when it's like getting people to reach back out or to register. And then I lose
Register.
excitement about it because whether it's the Eventbrite or the Facebook events or whatever it is, there's no traction. So I'm like, this isn't going
Yeah.
to work anyway.
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing what that pre-event would look like for somebody that is at a different level than y'all are from a beginning to medium, and how
Yeah.
they go about triggering the anticipatory response bias part of
Yes.
all this? And I'll
Yes.
leave it up to both of y'all to kind of go back
Perfect.
and forth. I don't want to interrupt, but
Fantastic.
let's
Awesome.
rock
Thank
into
you.
it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So the most important thing when you're looking at a virtual event in the very beginning is what's the concept of the event? The concept is what leads and determines the entire event. And what I mean by that concept is what's the event named? What's it called? What is the outcome that somebody is going to achieve by attending the event? Right? Our time is very valuable. Everyone's time is valuable, right? And instead of paying, you may not be paying for an expensive ticket. It may be a low cost ticket, but you're still paying with your time, right, to show up. And in order for me to actually want to show up, there needs to be a believable outcome that I believe I can achieve based on reading your registration page, something that's in line with what I want to do, right? And ideally it's something that you have a demonstrated capacity, of, like, there's proof behind you getting that type of result that's going to help for your conversions. So getting really clear on the concept. Who is this for? What problem does it solve? Right? And what's the mechanism or framework that's going to get them there? Okay. So what we want to do is, even on the registration page, we want to create a bridge. Typically, this is 3 to 5 steps or tenets or pillars that showcase, hey, when you correctly execute these 3 to 5 steps, then it is with there's a good likelihood that you're going to get this result, right? The intended result. And so we want a strong concept, which is future focused and outcome focused. What is the outcome that they're going to achieve? And then what's the framework to actually get there? If you've got those main components on your registration page, and you've got some proof, right? Some case studies, some testimonials. Those things alone are going to give you the best conversion and also attendance. Because here's the reality: some people register for an event, but if they're not bought in, like really bought in on the front end, then they're not going to anticipate the event. Like, they registered because it's like, okay, that looked cool, but they're not going to anticipate the event. And if they don't anticipate the event, they're not going to show up. So everything that we do once somebody registers, so we talked about the front end, right? The concept, the outcome, and the mechanism. But then once somebody registers, we work to trigger their anticipatory response bias. We do that with a series of micro commitments throughout the process of once they register, right? So it starts what Natalia was mentioning, what we call a pre-event assessment. So people register, they go through the pre-event assessment, which collects some data. We use that pre-event assessment to then optimize the marketing on the front end. And Natalia and her team uses that to actually personalize those one-to-one conversations. So they use that to actually dive right in to the areas that matter most.
So
Babe, anything
I
you
just
want to say
want
on
to,
that?
yeah, I just want to jump in on this too. So just that the first part of your question, JB, about, people who are kind of just getting started. I think a lot of people get really lost in the sauce, right? Lost in the weeds of it. And they can almost feel very overwhelmed. Like, even as I'm listening to Caleb, I'm like, wow, he's so brilliant. And if I was just starting out, I might feel a little overwhelmed by like what he's saying. And so for those, which is not like anything, it's not a shot at him. It's just the reality of where we all begin in the beginning. Right. And so for those that are kind of new to this, I would say the biggest piece, because we've had conversations with so many people. In fact, like, I would say when we first got started, a third of the people that we served had never done events before. And one of the biggest pieces of value that they got from the very beginning was realizing just how much they weren't in connection with their audience. Like, they were looking, they had a list, but they weren't actually in communication or connection with their list. And we're like, well, they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to name it. I don't know what they want. I don't know what to teach them. And it's like, well, have you asked them? And so I would just start with that. Like for anyone who's just like wanting to get started, you're thinking about providing value in the form of an event. That could be just a small webinar, that could be a challenge, whatever the event looks like in your mind that you're excited about delivering, but you're nervous because you don't feel like you have the right idea yet. It's like engage your audience around that and let them know and say, guys, I want to host an event for you. I want to bring you value, but I would love for you to help me by letting me know, like, what can I help you in learning, or problems that you want to be solved, that you want, that I can support you in solving. And then incentivize them and say, if you respond back to this survey or respond back to this email, however you survey them, I'll give you a ticket for free to the event. Right. Like, so that way you're getting that feedback and you don't have to rely on your own ability to like think about it, or your own genius, if you will. It's like, get the support of your audience because they have the answers. You just need to ask them.
Yeah, both of you really put a few things, aha moments in my mind, that these are mistakes I've made personally in the past. And if those that are tuned in right now, if you've experienced this yourself, where you've scraped a bunch of emails, you use some sort of lead database or business database, and whether it's mass text messaging or mass emailing, you had the information, but you were missing the two-way communication. It sounds like, based on how y'all run your events, you're creating energy and curiosity by the events page, like Caleb had shared. And
Yes.
then it sounds like on your end, Natalia, you're now building a friendship with them by
Yes.
saying, hey, I would love your insight on this. Would you mind sharing this? And just getting them to reply back. And I think, that's a big piece that's missing. Like, for example, if we were to take this to a local event for business owners or for other SaaS or other agency owners, right? And saying, hey, this is the event I'm putting on. We're going to solve these things and all that good stuff on the events page. And then I get a message from them saying, hey, this is not an automated AI message. I want to connect with you because your experience, or I did a couple of research on your social media that I think you can add some additional value. Can I run an idea by you? Is that the kind of the approach that you guys are going with? Can I run
Yes.
something by you?
Yeah. Or just literally
Yes.
we'll say, we love your feedback, or we love your ideas, and I think what you're saying, JB, is so good because I think we forget that the list is, when we start to like refer to things as we scale, we start to refer to things as like inanimate objects, right? So like the list is just a list versus like actually personal contacts of a community that you have, that
People.
you've created. It's like people, human beings, right? And so I just think sometimes I can't remember who said it, but it's sometimes we need to stop thinking about like scaling, and sometimes we just need to think about serving. And I know it's impossible at scale to try to serve every single individual, but even if you focused on serving just a few, and in doing so, meaning connecting with them personally, that will scale ultimately, right? It'll scale the results. It may not be a scalable activity, but it will help scale the results, because that will provide you with enough energy, because that also gives us back something, right? Like we're like, finally, we're like, wow, we're actually talking to a human again. This is great. So like it energizes us as well towards a solution and towards, again, the service. And it reminds us of why we do what we do beyond just like the financial gains of it all. But I think just remembering that your list is a community of human beings. And if you can do some non-scalable activities to get in touch with these people and actually start a conversation where you get real feedback, then you take that feedback and then you scale the results with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's starting to click for me personally. And if it's clicking for those that are tuned in, comment below. What's starting to make a little bit more what's a little bit more clear for you. And if you have any questions, also comment below. We'll get those answers to as well. When it comes to that anticipatory response, is that happening on the marketing end? Is that happening on the conversation end? Is it happening in both areas? Like, for
Yeah.
someone that doesn't really understand what that means from a psychological perspective, could you dumb it down a bit,
Yeah.
just so it makes sense for someone who's maybe a little bit more techie,
Yeah.
less than
Yeah.
salesy?
Definitely. Definitely. It's so it's the personalized interaction that happens once somebody registers for the event, leading up to the event, that makes them go, wow, there's something different about this. There's immense value here, right? So it starts with that pre-event assessment, because the way that we ask questions on that pre-event assessment, we get deep very quickly. So right off the bat, when somebody registers for our event, they're like, they go through that pre-event assessment, and they're like, oh wow, okay, like nobody's ever asked me that question before.
Could you share maybe 2 or 3 of those questions just to
Yeah,
frame the type of approach you're going with? And again, they might change depending on
totally.
the industry or the presentation you're offering, but
Of course, of
if you can give
course.
us an
Yeah.
example or some sort of industry to
So we
work off
collect
of.
some basic data up front, right? Like, what do you best, identify as, like, coach or business owner or real estate agent or whatever, right? And then we're going to get into some questions around, like, fast forward 12 months from now, like, what does like your ideal life look like, right? Next question: what's held you back from achieving that result, like from actually fulfilling and seeing that life come to fruition, right? What else have you tried
Mm.
as it relates to this problem that we're solving, right? Like, what else have you tried? So we ask some key questions there that really get them to open up, and they just start thinking, like, okay, like, I don't know what it is about this, but like, that already got me thinking. Like, I already got value from this, and I just registered for the event.
Yeah. And Natalia, if you could just maybe add a little context here for, because it's Caleb and I will go deep in the weeds, right? That's just maybe it's a gentleman strategic marketing kind of, we just look at things very, very, very in depth. Do you
Yeah.
mind sharing a little bit for someone who's not as in it or maybe a little like hesitant to get involved? Could you maybe just like bring it to be more welcoming for
Yeah.
them?
Yeah. Actually,
Because
I'm
this is
so glad.
something totally new. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
again, this isn't something cool that you just do 1, 2, 3 and you got some sales coming in. It takes a
Right.
lot of effort.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. And so I'm actually really glad you asked that question, because I wanted to bring this up earlier that, again, we've served people that have never done events, and then, now we're serving people that are trying to take their events that they're doing at scale and 3x them, right? So we've served people across the spectrum. But one of the things that I would say for those who are like thinking about, like, why should I even listen to this conversation, right? Like, I'm not, it
Or
doesn't.
even respond to these questions. Like, who the heck do these people think they are asking me these types of questions?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that the biggest piece is remembering that an event, and, like, first of all, asking these questions is important to the person that you're serving, because it helps them think through the problem that they have. A lot of people are not thinking through the problem. And a lot of us make the mistake, so to speak, like when we're on our side, we're providing the service, or we're providing a solution. We make massive assumptions about our audience. That's like the number one thing that I see. Like, I would say one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen clients across the board make is that they think they know that their audience better than their audience knows themselves. And I've asked every single one of our clients before, again, from beginner to expert, like, when was the last time you asked your audience that question? And they're like, I can't remember. You know what I mean? So it's like, it may seem like a little lofty, but the reality is that you can't say you know your audience until you've actually asked them these questions that are relevant to them.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
I don't remember the last time I attended a conference of any kind and someone said, "Hey, I'd like to ask you 3 questions to have an understanding of how we could best serve you." If
Exactly.
someone were to send me that, I'd probably respond back because I maybe spent $900 for the ticket.
Yeah.
Right? Because most of these events are 997, right? In-person events to start off with, whether they're good or not.
Yeah.
And no one even reaches out to you that I've at least attended. Maybe I'm attending the wrong ones. But no
No,
one's even
that's,
calling me
yeah.
aside from an automated text saying, hey, here's your upgrade or here's your upsell.
Yeah. Imagine if they just asked you one question. And I would say, if there was one question that you should be asking every one of your attendees, like, we asked them like 12 questions, but if
Mm-hmm.
you only had to ask one, it should be, thank you for purchasing. I just want to make sure you're served at the highest level. What would you need to come out of this event with in order to feel like it was a 10 out of 10 for you? Like, what do you want to learn? What would you like to experience? Because that, a lot of times, and I'm just going to be honest, like, going back to this whole idea of trust, the reason why trust is so important now is because people have felt burned. Right. And the reason why they feel burned is because they feel like nobody actually cares about their experience when they're engaging with them, when they're being engaged with, I should say. And so I think if you can just do that one little thing really early on, like Caleb's saying in the very beginning, once they register, ask them what would make this a win for them. It's like, wow, that already is putting you like leagues ahead of everyone else. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And the both of you really, really helped shape this like huge canvas of just, it could be anything. And what we've done in our in-person events, mastermind events, is we'll do on day 2, we do like a 3-day event. On day 2, we'll do a survey to prepare for a hot seat, right? And we'll get our audience involved with, if you want to participate in the hot seat, what's one thing you'd like to teach to the audience, your co-audience? And then a handful will respond back, and we'll see a great amount of engagement because of that. So as you're sharing these, the both of you are sharing this, it starts to make sense on, so I'm looking back, what have we done? That's one of the things that I didn't even realize that we were doing early on. And we have like a whole events team behind the scenes that thinks this out. We just kind of just execute on it. But now it makes more sense. So I appreciate you guys sharing that from that perspective. And I know we spent some extra time on this, the pre-event, but if you don't have attendees, you don't have confirmations, you don't have some sort of a roster, then you don't have an event. And let's just fast forward here. Our audience has a list, right? We all have a list of some sort. How they got it, it's none of our business, but they have a list. They've activated that list by asking that one question. That one question maybe got from an opening rate of 60% or whatever, maybe 100 or 200 responses, whether they were in depth or short. Now they have a good audience that they're really working with, which is the ones that are engaged. Everyone else is extra, icing on the cake.
That's right.
Is that fair to say? I just want to make sure I'm on the right page. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm now gearing my event. If I'm doing this internally here, I'm gearing my event around the 100 people that responded back. That's where I'm building out my during event experience. So we fast forward to during event experience.
Yes.
You mentioned the creating a breakthrough experience. Now, does that mean we have fireworks, sparklers, fog machine,
all of it? Yeah.
Like, what's that mean today?
There's a rocket man that takes off. All of it, man. All of it. Come on now.
I know you guys definitely got to be putting on a good party, but for those that are doing this at the beginner level, could Natalia, could you walk through a little bit? You and your event coaches get this engagement.
Yeah.
This 100 or so people are responding back, or maybe 25 people are responding back. How do we start the breakthrough experience?
Yeah.
And go from there.
That's fantastic. So what we do is we take the answers to those questions, right? The survey that we sent out, as well as if you're doing the pre-event coaching calls, the feedback from those pre-event coaching calls. Then we're not smart enough to go through all of that data because it's a lot of data, by the way. So we actually put that through, anyone can do this, by the way, through ChatGPT. And we say, can you please give us the most actionable insights based on all of this data, which is mostly qualitative, right? People answering questions about what they're looking to do and what's kept them from achieving results. We have it then give us the most actionable insights, and we use that to put the finishing touches on the presentation to make sure that we're hitting on those major pain points that the audience is giving us before the event even starts. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And as I'm just understanding this, because it's new to me from a professional event organization process, what else should I be thinking about for this during event?
Yeah.
100%. So I'm gonna just jump in. So I think the biggest piece is just going back to the feedback that we've gotten from attendees in past events is that it feels to them when they show up virtually that it actually feels more like they feel more connected to the speaker than they do in a in-person event. And the reason for that is because of the way that we are intentionally creating connection during the actual event itself. So I would say, again, the number one thing that I've seen people do kind of like by mistake that I think, ends up creating disconnection, so to speak, is the fact that they're not engaging their people in the chat. Now, it may not seem like that's like a big deal when it comes to this idea of creating a breakthrough experience, but when you're actually encouraging your people to share themselves with you in the chat, like if you're teaching them something and you're like, can you relate to this? Like you did it earlier, JB, right? Like, so when you ask your people, drop in the chat, like, do you relate to this? Or drop this word in the chat if this is you. Now, all of a sudden, they feel like they're sharing themselves with you. It's not just a one-way stream of communication where you're on a platform talking at them. Now you're in communication with them. So that's kind of step one. The next step is in the questions that you're asking. And I would say we do this in a way that's sort of twofold. The first way is, again, using the chat to sort of ask questions that are more meaningful. So instead of just call and response, where you say, drop this in the chat if this resonates, it's more like, let me ask you this question. And you ask a specific question and get people to share like what's coming up for them. And then you read it back to them and you say, Mary, I totally see that you're saying this. And I just want to do a little bit of coaching with you around this, right? And now you're speaking with her and you're having a conversation with her, but it feels like everyone is included in that, right? Yeah. The next piece is we typically have a workbook, and not everybody, again, kind of bringing it to a beginner level. You don't have to have a workbook that you create for your events. You could literally just have like a worksheet that's like in the form of a Google Doc that everyone has access to. But we intentionally create segments where there's like a 5-minute break during the events for people to actually reflect on specific questions. This can be like for mindset, but it can also be for tactical stuff. Like we've asked people like, okay, what was the biggest thing that's interfered with your marketing in the past? Right? Like now, what's your new strategy for marketing now based on what you're learning here? Right? And so this actually allows for integration to happen on the call versus, again, just passive learning. Now they're involved in the process and they're integrating it. And then you call people up. The third piece is now you get to call people up and have them share with you. And you say, okay, raise your hands. And I'm going to hot seat you real quick. And I want you to share your breakthroughs with me. And now it's like, again, it's no longer about you. It's all about them. And that process is what creates the breakthrough.
Yeah. Because when the audience starts seeing other people in the audience saying, man, when you said this, like that's what did it for me. And they start seeing these breakthroughs, again, it triggers the rest of the audience to say, wow, there's breakthroughs happening here, right? Like, let me look for breakthroughs. And it actually predisposes us to then look at the rest of the content in that light.
As I look this, so, sometimes we do things without planning, right? Like we just call it luck, call it just, you get it without understanding what you're getting. But I've seen it internally here at High Level where we'll do our workshops, we'll do the challenges, and we'll have the Zoom room. We'll push all the traffic to our Facebook page or our YouTube page, and those will be the two that we engage with. And we'll see when we're live and we're having these conversations and we're calling, like you mentioned, call people out or maybe just repeat a question. Someone will know that's the question that they wrote because of the way you read it. Yeah. And then asking for the feedback and other people seeing that response coming in. Yes. I've noticed that not only does comments go up, but also the authenticity and the openness comes even better, and people start engaging with each other.
Yes, exactly.
And I've seen over the years, now that I look back at the events I've been at, the difference between a great event and an amazing event and an event that was just a mistake to go to was it was all about them or the person or the company and not about me or me and other like-minded people that are in the room.
Exactly. Yeah.
And again, I don't have the science on this. Like I don't do this for a living, right? Like like you all do with experts and different people at different levels. But when I take it back to just a day-to-day, it clicks. And I think, for someone that has a client, so they're a SaaSpreneur, they're an agency owner, they have a coach, they have a consultant, they have a chiropractor or someone that they're serving with their platform that wants to do events, this framework of just at a basic level could work for them as long as they set up the right registration, they ask the right one question, and then when they go live during the event, they make it visible for everybody to engage.
Yes. Yes. And just follow that 3-step framework that Natalia just went into. Because when you follow that framework, you don't have to be you don't have to teach everything for the entire time. Our clients actually only teach for about half of the amount of time that the whole event happens, because the first section, just like she said, about 30 minutes is going to be a content section around a certain pillar. That's where you'll actually speak and deliver content around one of the pillars. Then you go into the workbook exercise, or just some sort of exercise where we put on some music, right? And you just have the audience fill out, answers to well-crafted questions. And then the breakthroughs, the group shares after that. That's what brings the energy up and then propels you into the next content section. So if you just follow that 3-step framework for each content section, you don't have to do as much of the teaching, and it brings the audience into the conversation.
Yeah, and the workbook, the worksheet, the breakout moment where they're just connecting with the paper, letting it at least be visible to themselves. Maybe they don't share, but it's written
Yeah.
down.
That's
There's
right.
something to say for that. And I've taken a few notes personally to maybe incorporate in what we're doing internally. So I appreciate the quality nuggets y'all are sharing. I just want to go back to the actual platform that's being used, right? There are several recommendations of, pre-recording and using different platforms to simulate that it's actually happening. Now, I know that there's different uses at different times for these types of, accelerating, ways to, kind of
Yeah.
spread out, right?
Yeah.
At what point what platform should someone use? Like, is it the Zoom? Is it a pre-recorded webinar, really built out the way you guys are mentioning it? And where should the engagement happen?
Great
And again,
question.
this is I'm speaking to maybe somebody who doesn't have a real big audience. They're starting out new. And then obviously
Yes.
for those that are experts, there's a different stage for that. If you want to share
Yes, of
that towards
course.
the end, that's fine too.
Yes, no, such a great question. So we've always used Zoom. Zoom works, right? It works. At the same time, we've had colleagues who've used other platforms. I think that's I wouldn't get too hung up on that. If I was just starting personally, I would just go with something as easy as Zoom. People know Zoom, they're familiar with it, they're comfortable with it.
Is
Now,
this
in
the
terms of
Zoom like we're using now, or is this like the Zoom webinar version, the Zoom Enterprise? I mean, because some people going deep in the
great
weeds. I need to
question.
buy
Yeah,
this five hundred
yeah.
dollar version of this to make this happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So we do Zoom meetings for everything. So it's the
Mhm.
actual meeting structure, not webinar structure, so that we can actually see, right, all of the
Oh,
attendees.
yeah,
That's
this is
such a
so
huge
big.
piece.
So
Yeah.
big, by the way.
Yeah.
Guys, for those, even for what those of you that are doing webinars, like whoever's listening and you're already doing webinars, switch from webinar mode to meeting mode, because then
Huge.
you can actually see your people,
Yes.
that you actually feel like you're speaking to an audience versus just speaking to yourself. It totally changes how you engage them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For anyone listening, whoever's spoken on stage before, it's a whole lot different when you're staring at a camera, because you get that feedback, right? And
In the real
so you
audience, you get a feedback. Yeah.
in the real audience, but you also get that feedback when you have everyone's cameras on and you're
Yeah.
looking at your audience through a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
So we use
John, you asked
Zoom
one other
meetings.
question. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. You asked one more other question about
Yep. Yep.
live versus pre-recorded,
Yes. That's a
right? So
Thank
this
you for
is this is
grabbing
such
that
a
because I almost moved on to something else. So that's important.
it's
Yes.
such a big conversation. It's such an important conversation. So for somebody who doesn't have a massive audience, right? Live is always going to, I use this word, it sounds a little transactional. I don't mean it this way. It's going to convert better because live creates that intimate, authentic experience. If it's not live, it's harder to get the audience to really feel that energy in the same way. And so for someone who's just getting started, 100% I recommend live all the way. When you get it dialed to a certain point, you can look at pre-recorded, but at that point, it's kind of a different experience that you're creating. We're all about creating like that authentic
Yeah.
and breakthrough experience, and so live, nothing compares to live.
Just on this topic here with the worksheet portion of it, um, and I guess, do you have them submit the worksheet? Like, what point do you continue that two-way communication that
Mm.
you did early before the event? Is
Yes.
there a Dropbox or somewhere that you're having them plug that in? And then how do
Great
you use
question.
it for the next day?
Great question. Yeah. So the worksheet is for them. The workbook, the worksheet, that is for them, right? That is for them to reflect, to write down, answers to questions so that they are experiencing that growth in their mind. They're experiencing those realizations for themselves. That's kind of it's intimate, if you will. So we're not asking them to upload that. That's just for them. Now, this leads us, however, into the post event, right? Bringing that trust and certainty to the finish line. So, everything that Natalia does with the sales coaches on those pre event coaching calls, I can see you smiling, Bay. You want to take it over from here?
No, no.
Okay. So, everything she does on those pre event calls, each of the coaches at the end of the call, they're going to actually book in that same prospect for a follow-up conversation post-event to talk about and talk through their breakthroughs, their takeaways, their ahas. And then obviously at that point, we're segueing into a sales conversation, right? So the personalization picks up when the event is over. And by the time the speakers deliver the offer, because of the pre-event calls, all of the post-event sales conversations are already booked in. By the time the offer's been delivered, all the sales conversations are already booked in, right? So you're going to have people take action initially right away on the offer, but for those who don't, there's a conversation already booked in for post-event. So this allows us to shorten that sales cycle, right? And really condense that sales cycle. So from there, the coaches get on those post-event calls, and that is where we refer back to their takeaways from the event, their ahas. We talk about some of those things like what they wrote down, why
Yeah.
that was important to them, right? And this is Natalia's.
And Natalia, you leave it up to Caleb and I. You put us in a jungle with a machete. We'll share the machete and go through the whole jungle by ourselves, the
Right.
hardest way possible. For the audience that may be saying like, this is way too much. This is not going to be worth my time. I'm just starting to really get my understanding on my one method I'm working on that's bringing me revenue or leads. Could you break down maybe the spark notes or the tactical or the action items that you would normally give if somebody paid you thousands of dollars to coach them on how to do this in their business? Could you bring us through that
Yeah.
flow and just kind of tie it all together?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing is this idea of like the reason why creating a stage for yourself matters is because you get to actually create FaceTime with your audience, right? With your community. And I would say that like we were talking about Zoom platforms earlier, we're talking about how it matters to do like live versus pre-recorded. And it's like, I wouldn't even be thinking about the size of your audience. I would say like if you can get in a like if you can get in the same room with your audience, like do it.
Yeah.
Just start there. Like don't even overthink it. Even if you were to initiate, and I think this is just like a really beautiful starting point, is like just have like a town hall. You know how there's people who have monthly newsletters. You could do the same thing instead of having a monthly newsletter, just have like a monthly town hall where you're just inviting people from your community to get on a call with you and you just do some quick Q&As. So it doesn't have to be this big old like orchestrated thing in order for it to be valuable.
That's right.
I think the other piece is you always want to invite them into the next step. And I think like the biggest piece that I see missing again from across the board of people we've served is that a lot of times it's the way that they're making the invitation for them to go to the next step that is actually missing. So for
Right.
example, like if you have something more, like if you don't have a high ticket offer, but you've thought about something valuable that your audience could use that you haven't yet like offered to them, like don't be afraid to say, guys, like if you're interested in this service or if you're interested in getting support around this area, we've just launched something new. It's $500 and I'd love to invite you to check it out with us, right? So like in other words, don't be afraid to invite your people to go into a deeper relationship with you, right? Like, especially because a lot of the people that you're serving, JB, like they already have some kind of relationship with their audience, right? Where they're being paid on a monthly subscription basis, right? And like the SaaS world, it's like you guys there, I would say that is the perfect community of people to be ascending into something more and something even more valuable. And don't be afraid to create that for them, because chances are, this is so key for everyone, people want to invest more in someone that they already trust. It brings us back to the very beginning of our conversation, that the companies that succeed over the long term are the ones that create these touch points consistently over time and keep inviting their people to go deeper with them. And so I would just say, like, don't allow that subscription to be the end point. It's like, keep making the invitation and get creative, because people, if they already like you and they have the rapport with you, then they're going to want to keep saying yes to you, versus if you can solve this problem for them, it makes it so much easier for them just to say yes to you than to have to go find someone else and to find that solution somewhere else.
That's right. Because they will go to somebody else, right? Because there's always another level of problem to solve, and they want you to solve it.
Yeah. And I like how the both of you, you guys, we hit both ends, right? So we went from, this event, informational event, potential, selling something or positioning some sort of offer, to now pivoting into like a town hall, or just making it almost not a networking event, but an informational event, right? So,
yeah.
We know the internet has a handful of, techno babble. We know that there's a lot of repackaged information. We know that there's a lot of smart people that either got smartness through learning from someone else, or they found out on their own and implemented it. People are looking to trust those that have been through the journey already. And I think what I'm gathering from the both of you here is that if you have a journey that's worth sharing because you've identified a problem that you can solve, then you should get yourself into a virtual event stage and create your own stage, because at that point you can get personal and use the information to serve your audience better than co-staging or paying to be on a stage.
100%.
100%.
And you don't, and here's the thing, I love that, JB. Like, you don't have to invest. It helps if you have the resources to invest in someone like us, right? Because we can definitely do the heavy lifting, but you don't need to. You can do it for close to free on your own Zoom, and just send in a couple emails out, get people to register through the Zoom registration page, right? And keep it super simple, or use Go High Level, because or High Level, I'm sorry, because they have an amazing funnel, what do you call it? Building platform. You know what I'm talking about.
I got it.
Yeah, but the biggest piece here is so important, guys, for, again, people who are like, like you're on the fence. It's like, listen, the reason why I used to be this person too, I was like, no way am I speaking on a stage to anybody, but I had such a heart to serve. And it clicked for me that the reason why I was nervous to get started doing this was because getting on camera and serving people on this level is because I was making it about me. But when you make the stage about the people you're serving, now all of a sudden it takes the pressure off of you. And if you think about this whole conversation that we've had, it's like we're really talking about how to take the pressure off of you to have everything figured out, to do everything perfectly, to have a big audience. It's like, guys, if you have an audience of 15, like, that's so perfect, because guess what? Now you get to have a really great conversation with 15 people instead of 100 people. Yeah, it's fantastic. So don't be afraid to start small. Be authentic. Like JB was saying earlier, like, create space for you to be authentic with your people. That's what creates trust. That is what creates people's, they get it. They're attracted to that. Your humanity is actually what makes you sexy. So, like, be authentic and allow yourself to be messy, because actually this is one thing, a statistic that was done, some kind of research that was done on YouTube, or TikTok videos. And the videos that actually have, like, show people like making mistakes in life and like doing like a thing, like bloopers basically, and like making fun of themselves, get more views than those that are perfectly curated and like done well. And the reason is because people resonate more authentically with other people in their mistakes than they do in their perfection.
Yeah.
So I would just encourage you guys, like, let it be messy, do it nervous, do it small, do it afraid, but
do it anyway.
Yeah, do it anyway. Create your stage to serve others, and your audience, like that's how you will scale. And eventually you'll get to a place where you're doing massive events because people won't be able to get enough of you,
That's right.
Yeah. And I think, Caleb, early on when you were talking about the registration page, you were saying show that proof, right? Bridge the gap.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think now you start with the first event, you grab those testimonials. Maybe
Yeah,
you continue that conversation, you have them record a few testimonials.
That's right.
There's how you start building your follow-up, but also people
Yes.
like this have attended it. And although it's a small, intimate group, that's what they loved about it. And I
yeah,
Yes.
think you can start to position your niche or at the very least your strategy to like just tell that story of why it's only 15 people.
Right.
yeah,
Right. Yes.
Sweet. I hope everyone
Absolutely.
that's tuning in now is getting that same moment. I'm trying to look at this from the perspective of an agency owner that's stuck in the weeds of managing a team of either full-time staff, VAs, or alliances that they've established. The SaaS agency owner that is enjoying the benefit of doing SaaS, but didn't really realize that, right? There's other things that come along with it of running a business, of
yeah,
a software business. And how do they I find that, a lot of the agency and SaaS owners that I meet, they loved what they did before they got really successful at it, right?
yeah,
Because
Mm.
it was like that middle point that it was just painful. It was like they were stressing about how they're going to pay the bills or stressing about fulfillment, and they lost the fun part of what they were doing.
yeah,
And then when
got
they
it.
started getting really good at what they did and the money was coming in, it's always funny. Like I'll look at my feed and I'll find
Wow.
like a handful of people that either start knitting or they start exercising and they start making these videos of them on vacations. That's my clue. Like they're at a point where they're kind of making it or they've made it already.
Yeah,
Because now they're enjoying telling a different story versus just a sales or an
yeah,
invitation story.
Yes.
And when you're in those weeds of the exhaustion of like, man, like I'm making money, but I'm not making enough to pay myself what I want to. It's hard to think of how am I make a fun event and get to know people and make them better, right? That's
Right.
where I think where you were saying, Natalia, it's about me. I want to get customers. I want to get a following, and I'm going to make it about what I can do for you, not what you need.
yeah.
So filling
And
in
Right.
that gap.
Yeah, I just want to I
So
want to chime
good.
in on that specifically because I think that when it comes to especially industries that have been commoditized, which many agency level services have been commoditized, meaning that it's very difficult for the consumer to distinguish you from the hundreds of others that are doing exactly what you say you do. That's where, again, bringing the conversation back to elevating trust and rapport and connection. It's like, guys, it's a no-brainer that if you're actually creating events for your audience so that they can actually feel connected to you, that you're going to win 10 out of 10 times
That's right.
over your competitors, because your competitors aren't doing it. And I'll give you this example. Like, a lot of people are like, events are not meant for everyone, and it's like, I would beg to differ. Sorry, I have a dog that's like entertaining himself over here. But apologies. I would beg to differ. We had a client that literally his whole thing was helping people reduce their taxes, which is not a sexy topic. And it's like, how do we create an event that's like sexy around this, right? And so the reality is that there's assumptions being made again that, oh, people don't want to go to events about learning how to reduce their taxes. Actually, people do, right? And we created an opportunity for him to distinguish himself from his competitors, because guess what? His competitors were making the same assumption. People don't want to go to events to learn how to reduce their taxes. So they're losing out on that market share. So I would say, to your point, JB, if you're in a position where it's like, at this point, it's like, how do we just increase our income and increase conversions? Even at the SaaS level, even at the subscription, recurring monthly income level, like, do events, because the more you get your face in front of your audience, the more people are going to keep signing up for you. And that's like a little wins will stack up over the long run. Right. And
Right.
so I would just say, like, don't sleep on events for what you're doing.
And I think, doing what most people don't want to do will set you apart. And, to what both of you bring to the table is your human uniqueness.
Mm.
And we may come across people like, I like that style, or I should do that. It's never exactly the way that they did it because the people are obviously different than each other. I think that if we could go the route of really just helping people understand the outcome of all of this effort, Caleb, the outcome of all of this effort what are some of the tangible results that if somebody just stays consistent with it, they get their 10 attendees, they build
Yeah.
rapport with those 10. They continue to repurpose the content. They do these events consistently at a small level, maybe bi-monthly, bi-week,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Yes.
What could someone use as a KPI or some sort of scale of, all right, I'm in the right direction. This is worth continuing on?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Well, obviously it's going to depend and differ for whether you're signing up agency services or SaaS or coaching or what have you. For some of our clients, they're generating six figures or multiple six figures in revenue over a single weekend. For others, it is simply a win to continue to do the thing and get the reps in, because what happens is you start to build your brand, because you're creating these transformative and authentic and connected experiences with your audience, and they may not buy right now, but you better believe that that creates an easier sale 6 months, 12 months, 24 months from
Yeah.
now when they are ready to buy. So even if you're not converting them right away, you're still building an immense amount of trust and establishing yourself as an authority in a way that they're going to remember. And when they need that service or they need that product, they come back and they come knocking, right? And we get that all the time. Like our clients let us know about that all the time. There's people who have said, wow, like this person's been in our ecosystem for 2 years or 3 years, and this finally made them buy. I don't know what it was, but this experience finally made them buy. And so whether they buy in the experience or they see it and they come back when they're ready, it builds your brand and establishes you as an authority at scale.
Yeah. You want to think of it as like you're just making deposits, right? You're just like making deposits to the bank account, and eventually it's going to pay out, like it's going to hit and you're going to get a payout. And so I feel like when it comes to specifically like people that attend the first event and don't buy, we've actually seen it happen where they buy on the second event. So like,
Yeah.
just don't discount people's decision making and the need to be in proximity to you, to like get to see you and see that you're being consistent. That's probably like one of the biggest pieces, is that if people aren't buying right away, it's because they need to see that you're being consistent in who you say you are and how you do things. And then, there's one more piece that I want to connect on here, but it keeps eluding me. But I'll pass it back to JB for now.
So I'm, now that I'm processing this as we're going along. Yeah, I'm really feeling that if I'm doing these events often, I have people showing up. I think the next problem I might need to solve is maybe my offer doesn't resonate, right? So
Mm,
maybe I start with my engaged audience. I can have an email conversation or another form of
yes.
conversation with a variety of offers or stack upon them as needed,
Yes.
because one may not fit all.
That's right.
And I think that's what comes to me in mind when it comes to, organizing all this, whether it's for both of you internally or working with clients. You see these results coming in. Um, how do you leverage a feature, or what's an important part of high level that you guys are like, what I love about that is this part. So I'd like to get from
Mm,
both of because you guys are a specialist in different parts of the business.
yes.
Natalia, when it comes to your part with your event coaches and how you're going about tracking the customer journey or the prospective attendee journey, what's something that you're like, this is one or two things that are like important to look at to make sure we're on pace?
Oh, wow. So good. So I would say this is going to be tricky for people who aren't doing the pre-event calls, right? To like kind of gather this information. But if you are able to facilitate some level of pre-event touch point, I think listening for what's holding people back from making a buying decision. And to do that, like to be able to speak to that early on in the event, right? Like getting that data in advance to be able to speak to those objections during the event, because now all of a sudden it feels like from the audience's perspective, it's like, oh my gosh, they're reading my mind, right? Like they're speaking to the things that I didn't even tell them yet, right? But it's because we got that information in advance of the event, during the pre-event call, or again, some type of pre-event touch point where you're able to sort of like extract that information. And I don't mean by asking explicitly, tell me what would hold you back from making a buying decision. That's not what I mean, right? Like you actually want to do it in a way that's so much more intentional by, again, in the discovery of the conversation, you're asking them, like, again, you're saying that you want to achieve this goal. What would you say has held you back from making progress in that direction? And when you're really listening in that moment, what they're going to tell you is actually the objection that's holding them back from, again, making a buying decision. A lot of times people will blame, they'll say, oh, it's, I've invested in all these other things and they didn't work out for me. So now we're talking about skepticism and trust, right? Or they'll say, oh, they'll start throwing out their money objections. They're always asking me to invest more money, or it's never worth what I paid for. So now we get to address the money objection during the event, right? Or, oh, it's, I don't have the support. So like whatever they're saying during that moment to justify why they haven't experienced greater success in the achievement of their goal, the pursuit of their goal, those are the things you want to speak to from a mindset perspective. And I just actually want to contextualize this because we actually had a client that taught people how to make money through like Airbnb type deals, right? And he literally said, he's like, I don't want to do any of that mindset stuff on the event, right? And it was really funny because we're like, hey, I totally get it. Like you don't want to go into personal development. But what he didn't realize is that when he didn't speak to those things, like, I'm not saying become a guru on the call, but what I am saying is speak to the mindset things that are stopping your people from taking action in the direction of the decision, right? Of the sale. Because if you don't speak to it,
and of getting the result.
That's what I mean. Yeah. And if you don't speak to it, it may feel woo, but if you don't speak to it, then they're going to use that as the reason why they don't move forward. So like, that's like, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
No, I was just going to say, like, that's the biggest nugget there. Like, if you could just, from the sales side of things, it always starts before the sale takes place. And that's where, like, from the speaker, the most important thing for the speaker to do is speak to the things that come up from a mindset perspective that are holding the audience back from making a better decision to like move forward with you or your product.
And it sounds like you're using the CRM a lot with making these notes or tagging these folks or putting it in their record contact.
Yes.
Because
oh my gosh, yeah.
High level has been pivotal for us because it's literally, we can run the entire event from high level, from the registration funnel, right? Like when people actually opt, like where they opt in to, we put them in the pipeline. We know what stage of the event that they're actually in. We use the calendar feature to then send out the pre-events call bookings. We use the notes to understand, right, the audience. Like everything can be housed inside of high level.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
And on that note, the notes are clutch, guys. Using the notes feature, because then what you can do is you can literally export all of the notes, run them through an AI like GPT type software to literally give you the pain points of your audience, and then you speak to them during the event. So definitely use the notes feature for sure.
And you guys spoke about data consistently, and I'm thinking, I mean, just there's so much to go in depth on, and I wish we had like an extra 2 hours to do this. And I want to be respectful of your time, our audience's time, and I appreciate just the comments below, the questions, the feedback. We'll get you some clarity on some of these things that are popping up. Caleb, when it comes to somebody just really being in the mindset of just the winning mindset throughout this whole process, and then just building upon it each and every time. What are some things that you've, in your experience working with beginner level speakers and speakers to experts, what are they doing like outside of being in front of the computer, right? Like what are they doing to make themselves a better facilitator than just typing away?
Yeah, that's such a great question. For everyone, I think it's a little bit different. Like for me, it's going to the gym, right? For one of our clients, he likes to walk in nature whenever he's like preparing, mentally preparing. He'll put my audio in because I'll send him an audio to like prepare him, right? For the event. He'll put that in and he just walks in nature. Sometimes he'll just listen to, like a motivational video on YouTube or music. Um, for preparing to actually speak, I think it's important to just do it as much as possible. Go to Toastmasters, right? Just build the muscle and the habit of getting up in front of people and actually speaking around the topic that you're passionate about. That's probably the most actionable thing that somebody can do
Yeah,
right away.
I appreciate it. And then when it comes, just to wrap this up here, communities are becoming more and more relevant. Um, how does somebody, or when should somebody start to establish their community, right? And let's say we
Mm,
just say, let's take it off of Facebook and let's bring it into a private community to
yes.
stack upon additional value. Could you just share, either one of you, could you just share, like, how do you like take on that responsibility, and is it really worth it?
Mm.
Mm, that's a great question. Well, the
So
great part, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
The great part about an event, right, is that it is a community is part of the event container, right? And so when you have an event that you do, whether it's weekly, biweekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever, you've got a community behind it who's experiencing that and then jumping into the community and interacting with other members. And it creates so much intimacy when that community has been through an event together. They've been through this experience, whether it's 90 minutes with you or a full 3-day event, right? They've been through this experience. So it's crazy. Sometimes it's like there's this level of camaraderie, like people feel like they've been through something, they've been through battle together. And so I think events, I may be a little biased, but events are the number one way to build a community. And I think community is more important today than ever before because we're all feeling right that lack of community as we move more towards online. And right now I'm sitting in an office. There's four walls around me, but I'm on a call right here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Natalia, with the whole woo-woo mindset, right? The person that thinks, that's just a psychological mindset warfare. They're just, manipulating. How do you help them understand that it's not woo-woo? It's actually making relationships and building a rapport with somebody. Like, how do
Yeah.
you how do you leverage events, community, email
Yeah.
follow-up, asking personal questions to stack upon that?
Yeah, 100%. So I would say, like you said earlier, JB, like it's all about the data. A lot of times people don't know like what they need to be doing, how they need to be presenting it, again, what they should include in their offer, what they should, be asking, what questions they should be asking, their audience. And they don't even know their audience because they're quite literally, they don't have the data. And so the best way to get data on your people is to literally be in communication with them. And obviously the event process allows you to do it at scale, right? It allows you to do one to many. But the biggest piece I think that is going to be valuable from the tactical side of it, right? That takes it out of this whole like woo thing, right? Of like connection and trust and all certainty, right? Is feedback. It shortens
Mm,
the feedback loop.
yes.
Super important because again, a lot of times I've actually seen this. It happens. I think it's a trap that happens at scale when you grow your company is that you actually lose touch with the people that you serve and you start making assumptions about them that you think the audience that you served when you first got started before you scaled is the same audience that you're serving now. And they've actually either evolved or they've changed altogether. And so if you're not engaging with your audience in a way where you can ask them questions and you can actually extract information from them, extract their feedback, then you can't actually be informed in the way that you're making decisions in your company. And
That's
so
right.
that's the biggest piece there. It actually
That's right.
shortens the feedback loop.
That's
And
right.
I'm thinking about this from an agency, traditional agency, maybe selling professional services. or even SaaS, you sign somebody up at a low ticket offer, a monthly recurring revenue of, let's say, $97 a month, and you don't ever communicate with them. You don't ever have a two-way conversation. You don't send them emails, and they buy something from somebody else even though you offer it. Right?
Yeah.
Or even professional services, a provider where they start offering SaaS, but they never engage with their previous list of maybe founding customers from their other agency to introduce them to what's going on. They buy SaaS from somebody else. So
Yeah.
the both of you brought so much great value and just really bringing this down to maybe a day-to-day operation of what maybe we might do in an agency or in a SaaS world. I appreciate you both. And if the audience, if you're tuning in right now, you have a question, jot it down below. Whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, jot the question down below. Natalia and Caleb are going to be jumping in there, answering it. In the bio, there'll be, if you're new to high level altogether, there'll be some additional information if you want to get up a trial to experience what they're using for their business, or if you just want to connect with them on a meeting, or maybe do something with them on a one-to-one, there'll be information on how to get a hold of them as well. Let's bring this home. We've been at this back to back, and I'm afraid that you guys might send me an invoice after this. I just want to put it on the record here. There's no fee for this, right? I mean, you guys have really opened up the treasure chest here.
2 more minutes before you get a bill. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up then. I love it. Well, to both of you, for the both of you to be on this Zoom call with me here in front of an audience and not going at it, I appreciate you, because it's always right. We didn't know each other too long before we jumped on here, right? And
yes.
It's very easy when you have two entrepreneurs that live together and that are running a business to take it serious to hit heads. And I think you guys have made a great example of, playing nice in the sandbox and sharing value at the same time. So thank you both for that. To bring us home,
that's a whole other podcast episode.
It is. That's our sister podcast that's coming soon.
That's next time.
That's next time. But Caleb, we're going to get ourselves in trouble here because we're going to take this longer than we're supposed to. We're going to say something we're not supposed to. And I don't want to get kicked off the Zoom here. But Caleb, finishing remarks on your end, a one-liner, if the Zoom were to shut off abruptly right now, what would you want them to know or hear in a quick sentence?
As Natalia was saying that last piece, something hit me. Dean Graziosi always says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And everything that we're talking about here may sound like super tactical. It all comes from this place of caring about who we're serving and showing that to our audience. And when you do that, your audience feels it, and they feel why this is different and why you are different. And that is how you become the must-have versus commoditized in a sea of another one of those.
Yeah.
Right.
Natalia, wrapping this up here, and then we're gonna just give people a reason to implement. What's your finishing statement on everything that you've shared so graciously?
Thanks. Yeah, I think it would just be to piggyback off what Caleb said. The difference between someone saying yes to you and someone saying yes to your competitor truly is hospitality. And that's it. It's like, if you can just add a little bit of hospitality to what you do, that will literally go miles and put you ahead of everyone else who's not doing that. So I think that's really it.
Yeah, to all the SaaSpreneurs, the agencies, those that are just learning about high level here, you've tuned in to an episode that could either make you to where you want to be or take you to the next level. We have a double mic drop here from the dynamic duo, Caleb and Natalia, husband, wife, working together, running their events business to a 7-figure business and helping other beginners to become 7-figure owners. Thank you both for hanging out with us. Thank you to our audience for participating. Till next time, we got more coming at you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next event.